The wind carried secrets that day, long and thin, like the whistle of a train that never came. By dusk, the town of Dry Creek had settled into the color of rust and resignation. The saloon doors hung crooked, the church bell cracked, and dust swallowed every footprint before it reached the horizon. On the porch of a shuttered store sat Mara Callan, a widow of 29, with hands rough from scrubbing and eyes dulled by too many mornings that began with hunger. Her black dress had faded to gray, her boots were splitting at the seams, and around her neck hung a thin cord where a gold ring used to rest. That ring, her husband's last promise, now lay on the counter of Griff Loomer's store, traded for half a loaf of bread and a jar of beans. "Fair deal," Griff had said, weighing the bread more carefully than he'd ever weighed a conscience. "It's all I have left," Mara whispered. "Then you're lucky I'm still buyin'," Griff replied, pocketing the ring, like a man swallowing light. Outside, she tore the bread into small pieces, saving some for morning, though her stomach twisted like barbed wire. A boy across the street watched her, Tommy Dawes, maybe 9, barefoot, his lips cracked white from the sun. "You sold your ring, Miss Mara?" he asked softly. She nodded once. "It wasn't feedin' me anymore." But the wind carried her words, and by sundown the story had already twisted into something crueler. In Dry Creek, mercy was a rumor, and shame traveled faster than sound. By nightfall, the widow who'd buried her husband was now whispered about as the woman who sold her vows for bread. Men smirked, women crossed the street, children pointed. And inside the saloon, under low lamplight, a man with a weathered hat overheard every word. He was Kalen Rhodes, a rancher, though most folks remembered him as something else, a soldier who'd come back from the war with scars on his hands and silence in his eyes. He drank, alone, always from the same tin cup, always facing the door. When he heard Mara's name, his hand stilled mid-drink. "Who's sayin' that?" he asked, voice steady but sharp as iron. Griff Loomer chuckled. "Ain't sayin' nothin' untrue, Rhodes. Woman sold her wedding band today for scraps. Guess that's one way to move on." Kalen didn't reply. He stood slowly, leaving a silver coin beside his drink more than the whiskey was worth, and walked out into the storm-colored dusk. He found Mara sitting by the well behind the chapel, staring at her reflection in the shallow water. The bread was gone. So were her tears. Kalen crouched beside her. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "did you sell a gold ring to Loomer?" She nodded. "He gave me food. That's more than most would." Kalen looked away, jaw tightening. "That ring, it belonged to a good man, didn't it?" Her eyes flicked up, wary. "My husband died diggin' wells that ran dry." There was a long silence, the kind that makes dust seem loud. Then Kalen stood, pulled his hat low, and said, "Stay home tomorrow. Don't answer your door till sundown." He didn't explain, and she didn't ask. Because in places like Dry Creek, explanations never came with kindness, only consequences. The morning came dry and red, the kind of heat that cracked paint and patience. Mara stayed inside, as Kalen had told her. She swept the floor twice, though there was nothing left to clean. Outside, the wind dragged grit across the porch. Somewhere down the road, she heard a gun cock, not a threat, just a warning that Dry Creek was awake again. At the general store, Griff Loomer was counting coins when Kalen Rhodes walked in. The door creaked, and for a moment, the dust hung motionless in the air. "Morning, Rhodes," Griff said without looking up. "You here for feed or gossip?" Kalen stepped closer to the counter. His boots were still caked in mud from the northern range. His voice was calm, too calm. "I heard you bought a ring yesterday," Griff chuckled. "That I did. Widow Callan's. Fair trade. She came to me hungry. I helped. Callan laid a small pouch of coins on the counter. I'll take it back." Griff raised an eyebrow. "Ain't for sale. Everything's for sale," Kalen said quietly. "Question's just how much it'll cost you to keep it." The room seemed to shrink. The flies stopped buzzing. Griff's smile slipped. You threatening me, Rhodes? No, Callan said, his gaze fixed on the man's trembling hands. Just telling you this. There's things in this town you can own, and there's things you can't. He pushed the pouch closer. Griff glanced inside. 10 silver dollars. Clean. Heavy. More than the store would make in a week. Griff licked his lips. You must care awful much about that woman. Callan didn't flinch. Let's just say some debts don't belong in another man's pocket. Griff's hand disappeared under the counter, not for the ring, but for the iron he kept there. Callan's Colt was already drawn. He didn't aim it. He didn't have to. The way he stood said enough. Griff froze, swallowed, then slowly reached for the ring instead. The gold was dull now, its edge dented where it had hit the counter. Callan picked it up, turned it once in the light. Funny thing, Griff muttered. You pay $10 for a memory that ain't even yours. Callan holstered his gun, met Griff's eyes. Not buying a memory. I'm buying what decency you've got left. He walked out without another word. The sun hung high when Mara heard footsteps outside her door. She stayed still, one hand on the latch. It's me, Callan's voice called, low but sure. She opened the door. He held something wrapped in a cloth. You told me not to answer till sundown, she said softly. I lied. He unwrapped the cloth. The ring glimmered in the slanting light. Mara gasped. Her hand went to her throat. Why would you? He looked away. Because they were laughing about it. Because some things ought to stay sacred. She reached for it, then stopped. I can't take it back. Then keep it buried, he said. But don't let it stay in that man's hands. For a moment, silence held them both, the kind that feels too close, too human. Finally, Mara whispered, You risked your neck for something that ain't yours. Callan's eyes softened. Lady, every man's got ghosts. Some of us just try to pay him down before we die. He turned to leave, but she caught his sleeve. What do I owe you? He hesitated. Just stay alive long enough to make 'em choke on their own gossip. Then he was gone, swallowed by the wind again. Mara watched him go, the ring trembling in her palm. It was heavier than she remembered. She looked at it for a long time then, with a sudden, quiet resolve. She walked to the well and dropped it in. The splash was small, but it echoed like thunder. By the next morning, the well behind the chapel had become a shrine of gossip. A passing child had seen the widow drop something shiny into the water, and by noon the story had bloated into a scandal that Mara Callan had cursed the town's well, poisoning it out of spite. Whispers became murmurs. Murmurs became words loud enough to sting. Dry Creek didn't need truth. It needed something to blame. Mara's cottage sat at the far edge of town, where the scrubland began a half-rotted roof, a garden of weeds, a gate that moaned in the wind. She heard them before she saw them. Voices outside, boots on gravel, a sound she'd heard once before when her husband's coffin was lowered, and the town stood just far enough away not to help. She stepped out. There were 6 men. Griff Loomer stood in front. His face was red and puffed, pride hiding behind whiskey. Morning, widow, he said, spitting to the side. You been throwing things in God's water? Mara looked at them, the faces she'd known for years, now twisted by smallness. I dropped a ring, she said. My ring. That ring belonged to a soldier, Griff snapped. Callan Rhodes paid good silver for it. Then you toss it in like filth? Sounds like witch work to me. Laughter followed, but it wasn't real laughter. It was the kind that needs company to stay brave. Mara's voice trembled, but she held it steady. You'd call a woman a witch 'cause she stopped beggin'? Something in her tone, weary but sharp, stung Griff. He stepped forward, close enough she could smell the rye on his breath. We don't take kindly to curses in Dry Creek. Maybe we need to remind you what happened last time a woman thought she was better than the law. From the back, someone muttered. Hang her. The word hit like a gunshot. Mara froze. Her pulse climbed. She saw the rope in one man's hand, old, frayed, stained from rain. Then, like a shadow cutting through dust, another voice broke in. "Try it." The men turned. Callan Rhodes stood 10 yards away, one hand on his revolver, the other empty, calm but cold as a desert night. "You heard me," he said, walking closer. "Try it," Griff sneered. "Ain't your business, Rhodes." Callan's boots crunched the gravel. "It became my business the moment you forgot what mercy looks like." The men hesitated. Griff's confidence cracked under Callan's stare. "You backin' a witch now?" someone shouted. Callan stopped beside Mara, close enough that his shadow fell across her. "She ain't a witch. She's a widow. And you're a pack of dogs barking at what you don't understand." He looked at the rope, then at Griff. "Put that down before you hang your own soul with it." The silence was deep enough to hear the wind shift through the churchyard trees. Finally, Griff dropped the rope. Callan turned to Mara, voice low. "Pack your things." She stared at him. "Where?" "West Ridge. My place. Ain't safe here no more." Griff's voice came, bitter and shaking. "You think you can hide her? She cursed this place." Callan's jaw tightened. "No. This town cursed itself the day it started trading hunger for cruelty." He took her by the arm gently, led her past the stunned faces, and they walked away, her shoes scraping the dirt. Her breath shallow, her heart heavy, with something that was not yet fear, but not quite hope either. Behind them, the rope lay in the dust, half coiled, half forgotten, a symbol waiting to decide what kind of story it belonged to. That night, the town well was quiet again. But Mara couldn't sleep. The image of the ring sinking beneath the water kept replaying in her mind, gold twisting through darkness. Beside the dying fire, Callan sat polishing his rifle, though his thoughts were elsewhere. "Why'd you come back for me?" she asked quietly. He didn't look up. "'Cause I've seen a rope do too much talking in this world." "And what's that mean?" He finally met her eyes. "Means I ain't watching it again." She nodded, wordless. Outside, the night deepened wide, lonely, endless, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled over the ridge. A storm was coming, but not just from the sky. The rain came like judgment. Hard, sudden, unmerciful. By dusk, the dry gullies had become rivers, the sky torn by veins of lightning. Mara stood in the doorway of Callan's cabin, her shawl clutched tight, eyes fixed on the horizon where thunder rolled like the growl of something ancient. "They'll come," Callan said from behind her, setting his rifle against the wall. She turned. "You're sure?" He nodded once. "Men like Griff don't forget being told no, especially not by a woman." The cabin was small, logs, dark, with years, floor-packed dirt, smell of rain mixing with smoke from the dying fire. On the table sat a tin lantern and a cracked Bible. Mara traced her fingers across it. "My husband used to read this when the wind got bad. Said storms bring old souls closer." Callan gave a faint smile. "Then we'll have company tonight." He loaded his rifle, each click slow, deliberate. His hands were scarred not from ranch work, but from something older. Mara watched him a moment. "You talk like a man who's done this before." "I've done too much before." The storm thickened. Water poured down the window cracks, whispering like voices. Mara crouched near the hearth. "If they come, will you kill them?" Callan didn't answer right away. Then, "Only if they leave me no other way." Hours passed. The rain softened to a steady hum, the wind shifting west. For a moment, it felt safe, two souls alone at the edge of the world. Mara dozed by the fire. Her face lit gold and amber. Callan sat at the window, a shadow with a heartbeat. When the first lanterns appeared down the ridge, he whispered, "They're here. 6 riders." Lanterns swinging like fireflies in hell. Callan stood, quiet as a prayer, checked the chamber. "Stay inside, no matter what you hear." She caught his wrist. "Don't do this for me." His eyes met hers. Ain't for you. It's for what's right. He stepped out into the storm. The door slammed behind him. Outside, lightning cut the sky open. The riders halted near the fence. Griffloomer's voice rose above the thunder. You can't hide her forever, Rhodes. She poisoned the well. Ain't no man's word gonna wash that clean. Kalen's voice came back. Low, but steady. Then it's a good thing Rain's been doing the cleaning for me. A few nervous laughs. Then, the click of hammers cocked. Step aside, Rhodes, Griff shouted. You can walk away. Kalen took one step forward. You want her? You'll have to walk through me. Thunder cracked, or maybe it was a gunshot. Then, the night erupted. Bullets tore through the rain. Wood splintered. Horses screamed. Kalen dove behind the trough, returned fire. One man dropped. Another fled. Mara pressed her hands to her ears inside, whispering prayers she didn't remember learning. The air reeked of smoke and wet soil. Then silence. Only the rain. She ran outside. The yard was a ruin, mud, hoofprints, and blood mixing like paint. Kalen knelt in the dirt, clutching his shoulder. Griff lay face down near the fence, unmoving. Mara fell beside Kalen. You're hurt. Not bad enough, he muttered. They're gone. But she could see it, the darkness blooming under his palm. She tore her shawl and wrapped his arm. You saved me. He gave a broken laugh. No, ma'am, you saved yourself. I just made noise loud enough for him to hear it. Lightning flashed for an instant. His face looked almost peaceful. Mara whispered, They'll come again. He nodded. Then, we bury the proof before they find it. She didn't understand, until he said quietly, The ring. In the well. Mara looked toward the valley below, where the town slept beneath the storm. She knew what he meant. The ring wasn't just gold anymore. It was the story they'd used to hang her with. And she wasn't ready to die for a story. At dawn, they rode out through the drenched fields, Kalen pale but silent, Mara leading the horse with the bucket from the well strapped behind. When they reached the creek bend, she knelt in the mud and pulled it free. The ring was there, glinting faintly beneath the water like an eye refusing to close. She held it a long time. Then she buried it in the riverbank, under a flat gray. Kalen watched her. That what you wanted? She nodded slowly. Let the earth keep what the world turned cruel. The storm passed, but its echo lingered. The wind carried the smell first, smoke, dry and bitter. By the time the sun rose over the ridge, the sky above Dry Creek was black. Mara and Kalen watched from the bluff. Below, the town shimmered in the early light roofs, catching flame, shadows running wild between buildings. The church? She whispered. Gone first, Kalen said. His voice was quiet, but not cold. Lightning struck the steeple last night. Fire spread before the rain could turn back. He didn't say the rest, that no one in Dry Creek had been sober enough, or kind enough, to form a bucket line. Mara watched as the fire ate the streets that had spit her out. I buried the ring, she said softly, but the curse stayed. There wasn't no curse, Kalen answered. Just rot too deep for rain to wash. The smoke twisted, upward, dragging ash across the morning sky. Somewhere below, a child was crying, thin and far away. Mara's throat tightened. We should help them. Kalen shook his head. We go back. They'll hang you before the smoke clears. But she was already walking toward the horse. Then they can hang a woman who didn't turn her back. They rode down the ridge, wind clawing at their faces, the air turning thicker with every mile. When they reached town, the saloon was half collapsed. Griff's store, a skeleton of charred beams. The well, the same one she'd once stood beside, steamed faintly, its stones cracked from heat. People ran with buckets, rags, blankets, faces blackened, voices hoarse. But when they saw her, they froze. The widow of Dry Creek had returned. Mara, someone gasped. You did this. She didn't argue. She didn't speak. She just picked up a bucket and joined the line. The water scalded her hands. The air burned her lungs. But she moved with purpose, like a woman who had nothing left to lose and one thing left to prove. Kalen followed her, his arm bound in bandages, his rifle slung across his back. When a man tried to stop her, called her witch again, shouted that the fire was her revenge. Kalen stepped between them. "Let her work," he said, his voice steady as iron. "If you think she lit this fire, then you'd best thank her for staying to put it out." By afternoon, the flames had died. Smoke rose from the ruins like ghosts reluctant to leave. The church was gone. Griff's body lay near the porch of his store face, half covered in soot, one hand clutching something blackened and round. Mara knelt beside him. The object in his grip was melted gold, the ring. She stared at it, unrecognizing. "How?" Kalen crouched beside her. "He must have gone to the well before the storm hit. Greed don't know. Weather." She looked at him, eyes wet with smoke and sorrow. He took it back, and the fire took him. She didn't move for a long time. Finally, she pried the melted ring from Griff's hand and dropped it in the dirt. It landed with a small, dull sound. "Let it stay," she said. "Let this place bury its own sins." That night, the town gathered in the square, what was left of it. No one spoke her name aloud, but no one called her witch either. They looked at her differently now, not with kindness, but with a strange, grudging respect that grows only after ruin. An old man, the same who'd once joined Griff's mob, stepped forward. "You stayed," he said. She nodded. So did the fire. He hesitated, then pressed something into her palm, a sprig of wild sage. "For the smoke," he muttered, a small gesture. But it cracked the silence like a seed in drought. Others followed, a woman offering cloth, a boy carrying bread, a farmer with clean water. None said sorry. None had to. And for the first time, Mara Callan stood among them, not as a curse, but as a survivor. As they left the town that night, Kalen looked back once. "You could stay, you know. Start again." Mara shook her head. "Some soil won't grow the same crop twice." He smiled faintly. "Then where to?" She looked toward the west, the land beyond the fires, where the air still smelled of rain instead of smoke. "Where the ground forgives easier," she said. They rode until Dry Creek was just a red ember in the distance, a memory fading beneath the stars. Years passed. The desert reclaimed what the fire left behind. Dry Creek faded from maps, its name spoken only by riders passing through a ghost town swallowed by sand and silence. But on the edge of what used to be Kalen's land, where the wind still carried whispers of gunfire and prayer, there stood a small patch of green, a garden. No fences, no cross, just life. Mara Callan kept her promise. She and Callan built a home where the soil forgave. He healed slow one arm, never quite the same, but he worked beside her, planting seeds where others had buried shame. No one came for them again. Sometimes travelers stopped for water, and she'd give them bread and shade. They'd ask her name. "Just Mara," she'd say. "A woman who stayed when others burned." Kalen would smile from the porch. "Don't let her fool you," he'd tell them. "She's the one who taught me mercy. Don't always wear a cross." He died one spring morning, quiet as the dawn. Mara buried him beneath the cottonwood he planted their first year together. After that, she worked alone. The ring, now twisted and blackened from the fire, lay half buried at the edge of the garden, marking the spot where she planted his favorite seed, wild sage. When people asked why she left it there, she'd only say, "Because not every scar needs hiding. Some grow roots." Many seasons later, long after Mara was gone, a traveler rode through what remained of Dry Creek. He found nothing but ash and wind until he reached the ridge. There, in the heart of the desert, a green garden shimmered in the heat, alive against all reason, and under the largest sage bush, he saw it, a half-melted gold ring, glinting in the dirt. He picked it up, turned it once in the light. The metal was warped, But the engraving inside was still clear enough to read. For bread, for love, for survival. He looked around the silence, thick, sacred, then placed the ring back under the sage. Some stories, he thought, weren't meant to end, just to be found again. The wind rose, brushing across the garden like a sigh. And somewhere in that hush, the desert seemed to whisper her name, not in sorrow, but in peace. In the Wild West, justice was a matter of power. But mercy was a choice. And sometimes the quiet choice of one woman outlives every man who tried to bury her. If this story of Mara Callan's defiance and quiet survival stirred something in you, subscribe to Western Drift Tales for more raw, cinematic legends of the forgotten West. Stories where mercy rides beside justice, and truth still finds its way through dust.